You're tuned in to the Restaurant RockStars Podcast. Powerful ideas to rock your restaurant. Here's your host, Roger Bodwin.
Welcome back, guys, to the podcast. It's Roger here, and I thank you for tuning in once again. You know, in this business of 1,000 details, one of the biggest details that has the most impact on your bottom line is payroll, right? And labor cost. So today I'm really excited to have Mr. Michael Splane, and he is a payroll technology specialist for Heartland Payroll Solutions. Now, Heartland has an integrative suite of services that'll help your business thrive and grow into the future. Not only do you get one dedicated representative to handle your payroll needs, but also you have access and on-demand access to a bank of human resources professionals that'll give you information, up-to-the-date info on state and industry-specific labor laws and respond quickly to any other issues you might have. You might say they're in your corner. We're going to talk about straightforward and fair, reasonable pricing with no hidden fees or surprises. We love that part. And they'll help you with your workers' comp plan, or if you're thinking of starting a 401k, we're going to talk about that too. So they're not just handling your payroll and your time and attendance. They're just so much more. So stay tuned. Listen to all the details in this business of 1,000 details. Thanks for listening, and on with the episode. Welcome back, everyone. This is the Restaurant RockStars Podcast, engaging topics that help restaurants build their brands, rock their profits, deliver amazing guest service experiences. But today we're going to focus on profits and convenience and efficiency. You know, I often call this the business of 1,000 details, and every one of those details is important, but which ones are going to have the greatest impact on your bottom line? And payroll is certainly one of them. So today I'm really excited to have Mr. Michael Splane, and he is a payroll technology specialist with a company called Heartland Payroll Solutions. You've probably heard that name before. Welcome to the show, Michael. How are you?
Good, Roger. Thank you very much for allowing me to spend a little bit of time this morning with your audience, just the heart and soul of the economy here in Maine and across the United States.
Well, Heartland is a very diversified company that's made a huge splash in the hospitality space. I can honestly say that I used your credit card processing services for many years. I was very pleased with the service and with the rate and all that kind of stuff. And I was really excited to hear that you're now involved in payroll. So we're gonna dive deep into payroll and what sets Heartland apart from other payroll service companies. We're going to talk about the differences between a service company and a technology company, but payroll can be a hugely time-consuming task in a restaurant without that technology, okay? And inefficiencies are important, and inaccuracies anywhere in this chain can lose a restaurant lots and lots of money. So there's a real return on investment to having the right company. So let's talk about the difference between a payroll service company and a payroll technology company.
Yep, and before we jump right into that, Roger, I wanted to just briefly talk about what you mentioned in your experience with Heartland credit card processing.
Yeah,
because that's a great story to tell. It's very important that folks know sort of why I'm doing what I'm doing with Heartland. And so Heartland, as you know, was founded by Bob Carr about 20 years ago. When he came into the payment processing industry, he saw an industry that was pretty much run by cowboys. They could charge whatever they wanted for merchant processing fees. And he really wanted to, he cared very much for the merchants, for the small businesses out there. And to protect them, he really revolutionized the industry by W-2ing all the employees at Heartland, tying us to an equitable portfolio, making sure that there's skin in the game and a vested interest in taking care of our clients and making sure they're happy. And that comes with, obviously, the pricing or the rates. It comes with the technology, make sure we have superior technology. And the service, the local service that we provide is not something that you would get from competitors calling an 800 number and talking to somebody that's been outsourced or overseas or something of that nature. So we really, I think, truly have a top-notch value proposition for credit card processing. And because we work so heavily in hospitality, it just felt natural to provide other solutions to our hospitality clients. And there has been a big demand for a real payroll solution that is, first of all, client-focused. So we personalize that client experience. It's all about the who, not so much the what or the why, but the who in each and every client relationship. And we want to make sure that experience is a good one, and they're getting something personal out of that, where they're talking to the same person each and every week if they need to. We also provide the technology so that they can go in through the portal and utilize the system that way. And it's very flexible and nimble. We created that. Our platform has been created because, or the way it's been created is because of the technology that we have today. It's much better, much more cutting edge than it was, 20, 30 years ago when a lot of these other systems were built. So we do have a leg up in that space, and we do take that same mindset with the pricing structure so that we cap things. We make sure that the client knows exactly how to budget or plan for the expense ongoing, and we stay away from the nickel and diming that goes usually you find in the industry, where they lure you in with a low fee and then they tack on these other payments that surprisingly you get at the end of the billing cycle or each pay processing period.
Right.
So hopefully that kind of sets the stage a little bit. But to answer your question, there are different players in this payroll market, this payroll landscape. And if you Google payroll solutions, you'll find 100 of them just pop up, and it's hard to just to differentiate which ones is the right one for you. And really, it comes down to, I think personally, the technology behind the system. So with a payroll service company, it's really just a service oriented, or a company that's focused on servicing the client, which is good. However, they may not be developing that technology for their clients. They're most likely they'll be purchasing or leasing that technology from a technology provider, such as a Heartland, that does provide the service. So that's the difference with a payroll technology company and a payroll service company. Is the service company is typically just borrowing somebody else's technology and providing a level of service, hopefully that's going to be better than their peers or their competitors. Does that make sense?
That was great, and I'm really glad that you took time to explain those details, because I think that that's some of the advantages. It's clearly a natural extension to go from credit card processing into payroll. These are all solutions that every restaurant needs. I think that's tremendous, but I think what you really touched on was the innovation part, because there is a parity where you expect good service and you expect just the basics of payroll to be handled, but you've taken things so much beyond that with the innovation and the different features that go far beyond the service into technology. So we're going to cover some of those in detail, but let's talk about some of the biggest challenges. Well, hold on a second. Before we talk about challenges, you talked about the nickel and diming, and I remember some of this. It's like every time you add a new employee, that's a certain amount of money. You're getting charged so much money for your W-2s at the end of the year and all this other kind of stuff. And there were other things that I'm forgetting now, because it's been many years since I ran restaurants. But I remember, because I used, I was in the habit of shopping services on a regular basis, because service was really important to me, but so was price. And I was always shopping, price and quality, making sure that all those things were there. And I had a number of companies throughout my lengthy career running restaurants that nickel and dime me. The service was lackluster. It was a revolving door of account managers. It was all this kind of stuff that just made my job, or running restaurants, harder, not easier. So, that's why I was pleased to find Heartland with the processing. And, it would have been awesome if I was still running restaurants today, I'd take a serious look at the payroll that you're offering now. But let's talk about some of the challenges now of the whole payroll process and some of the pitfalls that operators run into. They can run into tax liabilities and all sorts of stuff with outdated systems and, tip credit reporting. I don't want to get ahead of you because I know you got all this in your head, but why don't we list some of those challenges one by one and talk about how, Heartland solves those problems?
Absolutely. So we talked about the nickel and diming. It's funny, I met with a restaurant last week who was with a competitor that was getting a $30 fee for every single check that the employees wouldn't cash within a certain time frame. And I think it was within a 60-day time frame, which is that's pretty tight.
Yes.
For people today who rely on tips, their checks might be, $6, $7. They don't even care about the paychecks. They just care about the tips. So for those that just sit around, it's like, I always bring up the Manny Ramirez story. Manny Ramirez they find uncashed paychecks in his cleats in his locker in the Boston Red Sox locker room because he didn't even care about the money. So anyway, that's what I come across with a lot of this nickel and diming. But for innovation technology or innovative technology today, it really comes down to pairing the system. We built the system open architecture, open API, so that we could pair it easily with other systems like point of sale systems, time clock systems, a general ledger that the restaurant uses or the CPA uses on behalf of the general ledger, and having the ability to put in multiple workforce groups and locations, job costing for those work groups, and be able to toggle back and forth between the different locations, different work groups, workflow per se, if somebody's working as a host or a bartender, and a waiter or waitress all in one shift, you need to be able to, the system needs to be able to accurately track and account for each of those jobs worked, for the rate of pay, the tips obviously, and the taxes that are accounted for each of those jobs, which can vary. And I have some clients that have restaurants in multiple states, and those people may actually work in multiple states in one shift. They might be at one particular restaurant for half the day. They need to come over and help out in another restaurant in a different state.
Right.
Our system is intelligent enough, or I should say, systems today are intelligent enough to be able to track and account for those one shifts in different locations and jobs. So with regulation, obviously that's a huge other factor in this. That is making things change very, very quickly. So when you start taking into consideration FMLA, minimum wage law changes, and a lot of these are done now on a micro level. So at the city level, municipal level, as you know, state level, and then nationally, we have all these changes that are impacting these systems. And for these larger payroll companies that were built, their system was built 30, 40 years ago, I refer to it as the daisy chain server systems, where you got payroll that's probably several different groups of servers that are all talking to each other, and you got regular pay, overtime, you got tip wages, you got tax, you got benefits, all this stuff. And each one of these servers is trying to talk to the next server to relay the information and get everything tight within the system for the client. But the problem is, with that daisy chain system, it's one line of code that's pushing all of that data. So when you start making changes into each area with PTO or FMLA or mandatory paid leave or sick time, it really disrupts their systems, and you start to get lag, you start to get errors and penalties and those types of things with the taxes because they're not being calculated well enough. So with these new cloud-based systems today, everything is all talking to each other. It's all synchronized, all in real time. There's really no issues in making these changes. We can make them overnight. It happens as the laws pass, the laws change. We can easily go into the systems and update those tax codes, PTO schedules, what have you, to make sure that everything is done in accordance to the law.
Yeah, it's amazing. You and I talked about this recently, but we both still unusual as it sounds, we still come across restaurants that are on manual systems. They don't have POSs, and they have time clocks. And I just can't imagine, one mistake and how much that can cost a restaurant that would more than pay for a technology solution. Any of these tax liabilities based on, outdated systems or old systems, and you never know because you can't stay on top of all this. You really need a partner to do it.
It's tough, and it's getting tougher. And I see a lot of errors that are made, and it's typically restaurants that are trying to do everything themselves, or they are looking for a quick, easy way out with their CPA who is handling their personal taxes, handle the business side of things. They may not be acute to a lot of these new tax rules and loopholes. Like the workers' opportunity tax credit. This is something that has been around since the 1970s, and it's a federal program. And when I talk to most CPAs, they don't even understand or realize that program is available for hospitality, which because of the turnover is a huge tax benefit to a restaurant or hotel or pub today. I see saving our clients. I would say in general, if they're doing about 10 hires a year, and that's low, but if they're doing about 10 hires a year, 1 out of 4 qualifies for some sort of tax credit, anywhere from $2,400 to $9,600. So yeah.
Well, just think about that. If you're unaware of these credits and you are actually an employer that qualifies and you're missing out on those credits, what a difference that makes to your bottom line at tax time.
Huge. And then the FICA tip credit, that's another, average, I would say $600 per employee per year, per wait staff employee per year. Mm-hmm. So if they're not getting the benefits from FICA tip reporting, which systems like ours provide in real time to the client, that's other money that they're giving away that they could be reinvesting into their own business.
Of course. And if you're offering healthcare benefits, having a certain number of full-time employees and all that sort of thing, and the Affordable Care Act, there's so many different things that impact your payroll that this solution handles.
Yes, with benefits. So I see a lot of restaurants that are doing very well, growing, and these are not chain restaurants. These are small restaurants that understand attraction and retention strategies, and they utilize whatever tools they can get their hands on. Benefits is a huge one. And the nice thing about benefits, and when I talk about benefits, I'm talking about a disability plan, an accident plan, even a retirement plan. These are not, some of them, if they're voluntary, are not, there's no cost to the employer to put these in place. If they do sponsor those plans, though, they are tax deductible. But the nice thing with attraction and retention is, if an employee or somebody is looking that gets it, that's a little bit more savvy, maybe out of college and understands they're hoping to sock some money away through a retirement plan or an HSA, a health savings account, with that in place, they're going to want to work for a restaurant that has that instead of a restaurant that doesn't provide any benefit at all. I see it all the time, and over the years, they become more and more successful just from that one trigger alone. I think that's a huge benefit to the employer and the employees.
Absolutely true. Now, there are some very specific features of Heartland Payroll that I would really like you to tell the audience that I found really, really impressive. But let's start with a really alarming statistic that I heard recently. I was at a big industry summit recently in the last couple of months, and everyone is talking about the labor shortage and the challenges of finding and keeping a great staff. Turnover is notorious in this business unless you have a special way of approaching that. There's lots of restaurants that, do the standby is to put a sign in the window saying help wanted or put an ad in the paper, and that is not the way. People are hiring, they're not recruiting. But nonetheless, the statistic is this. They say that the average tenure of a new restaurant employee is just 4 months. And when you hire one of these people and you get them up to speed in the job, train them in some way to let them be competent in what they're doing, and then you lose that person for a variety of reasons, and then you have to find another person and get them up to speed, you're losing anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000 for one person just to, in lost time, lost productivity, and just repeating the process, and that can kill a restaurant really, really quickly. So one of the things that really stood out to me was something called Heartland Hire. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, this is something that we have we've been working on this for a couple of years, just released this or rolled this out this year, and it really meets the demands of our clients. So in addition to having a good payroll platform in place, and our payroll platform it's all customized for the client. It's tailored specifically to them, but we create an intranet for them so that the employer, the business owners, the managers, even the CPAs, the brokers can all have access, and the employees have personal access to the system. They can pull out their pay stubs and email them to their bank if they're refinancing, what have you. And this is kind of this is the way that the new payroll systems are working. It's really to create that environment. So as the employees start getting used to logging into the system, there's other things that that they can eventually have access to. And why not start at the ground roots when the employer is actually looking and recruiting for good talent? So if they're sending out a message, whether they're advertising it on on their website, Facebook page, if they're putting a banner out in front of the restaurant, they can provide, millennials are all on their cell phones today, so they can provide them with a text number to text to get the job. It's a hyperlink that they can actually click on. And I can forward some of this to you, Roger, so that you can, show your viewers, your audience, how this works. But it's very, very slick, so that all they have to do is click on a link, a hyperlink. It pulls up the job. They can apply for the job in a few simple steps, including using their Indeed profile, their LinkedIn profile, their resume. And from there, we can capture other information, such as qualifiers for the Workers' Opportunity Tax Credit right there on the spot. So as the employer hires that employee, they actually again ask for a few bits of more information to satisfy the W-4 and the I-9. They can take a picture of their driver's license or ID. It uploads into the system. The employer doesn't have to do anything other than hiring the person, and then all the data feeds directly into the payroll system. They don't have to manually enter that or fax it in or email scan it in. All that goes away. It makes it very, very simple for an employer, especially in hospitality, who, as you know, is running around doing a million things all at once all the time. And it really just takes a lot of that heavy lifting off of the employer and the employees to an extent. The employees look at it as, hey, this is really cool. These guys are on top of stuff. This is cutting edge, and I'm excited about working here.
And you can also remotely interview candidates, right, and network that?
You can.
Within your company with certain key people that would need to see this person's capabilities and see them face to face and ask them interview questions without actually having the potential hire on site at the restaurant.
That's right. And the beauty of this system is, let's say you don't hire that employee, we still capture that data. So all that information is stored or housed within the cloud. They can access that later on. So if, let's say, the hire that they hired didn't work out or leaves 4 months later, as you mentioned, they can go back to that database and pull 10 other people that they were good candidates and hire one of those. So it's almost like we become a data warehouse for the client for both payroll and now also hiring.
Let's talk about the onboarding process. You're taking on a new payroll client. Let's just say, for example, they have 25 employees. Walk us through the process of how long it takes to get up to speed, what you need from the new client, really, and then before they're actually processing through Heartland, the whole steps. Like, how easy is it?
So 20 years ago, when I started payroll with ADP, back then we'd have to have a client print out a stack of papers, this high, and we'd have to manually type in all that information, and it would take us weeks to get a new client onboarded, and there would always be hiccups in that process. Today, it's extremely easy. For a new business, obviously, all we need is a tax identification number or a registered federal ID, and then we use a blank check from the business payroll operations account that they would utilize for their payroll account, and we draw the payroll from that account in an electronic ACH format. And it's usually broken down into 3 items, which is the payroll, the taxes, and the fee. And very much like our credit card processing, we give the advantage to the client in terms of the pull. So we don't draw anything. We don't pull anything out of the account until the last minute. If they pay on a Friday, we pull at midnight Thursday night so that we make sure that the client can earn their float till the last possible minute.
Cash flow benefit right
there. Yeah, and so getting back to your question, if they're utilizing a payroll system today that is online, we can easily go into the system and then just pull out all the data that we extrapolate all the data right out of the system, and then we custom build the Heartland payroll platform for them on their behalf, utilizing their existing information. And what that does is it allows us to assume liability going back to 1/1 of the first of the year, so 1/1/2019 from this point forward, and that it basically allows us to create one W-2 for the employees that has worked in that pay period or through that pay period, that tax year, which really I think reduces a lot of redundancy and make sure that the client can sleep well at night, knowing that that's been done correctly.
I'm going to take you old school and go back 15, 18 years ago.
All right,
let's do it. Payroll company. So I would have a spreadsheet that I would have to literally type in the data for, and I think there were 6 or 7 pieces of information in every employee. Obviously, their name, their address, their social security number, the department they worked in, the wage that you were paying them, and then there was what they were claiming, for exemptions and all that kind of stuff. So restaurants still need to somehow provide that basic data on every person to Heartland, but I'm sure there's some technological advance since then that has made that process simpler. Want to elaborate?
Yeah, we built a time entry grid, and it's a matrix of all of those different variables and calculations that you could think of, and it's unlimited. So we can base it by employee, we can base it by the job, we can base it by the schedule, and it can be customized however the client wants. So within one employee's job, on a certain day, you could have a drop-down menu of multiple different allocations or deductions. You can have different rates of pay, obviously overtime hours, overtime wages, right. Different tip allocations. All of that can be customized within the time entry grid, and then of course that feeds into the actual paycheck, and then it's listed in the paycheck. The employee can go in and see everything in that system. The nice thing about our system too is because we talked about this open API, open architecture, we can tie that to the P.O.S. system, to the point of sale system. So if the employee is going in to that system, making any changes to their own profile or personal allocations, deductions, what have you, their schedule, PTO, all of that stuff would relay over to the payroll system. It all synchronizes and is relayed into the payroll. There's no surprises, but we do make sure that the employer stays on that authentication side of it, so that we don't allow the employee to go in and just make blind changes without the employer knowing of these changes. They have to sign off on any changes being made, whether they're deductions or allocations or loan payments or any of that kind of stuff that you might find in an employee needing today. Although we do have employees today that can't get checking accounts or don't want checking accounts, We can provide them with prepaid payroll cards as well, because we're a huge credit card processor. We have a direct link to interchange that allows us to easily do these prepaid payroll cards at no cost to the employer. That's a nice feature as well. And of course, we house all that data in the system as well, so we know exactly what the right tax calculations are, PTO, scheduling, all of that is built in within the system.
Have the majority of employees opted to do the direct deposits to their bank accounts at this point, or is it still a mixed bag?
It's still a mixed bag. I'm seeing probably 50-50 because the employees are, again, they're not so focused on the paychecks themselves. They're more focused on getting that cash tip at the end of the night, or the tips in cash at the end of the night, I think. Although, as the restaurants, become more, I would say, more focused on providing attraction retention strategies with benefits, you need the pay in the checks to cover a lot of those benefits. So with that happening, they are pushing more employees to a direct deposit to make sure that the funds are in there and they're available on Friday morning when the benefits are pulled, the premiums are pulled for those benefits. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
I recall there were lots of specific instances where my servers that made quite a bit of money in tips, would get a check and it would just be voided out because there was nothing there. And that's a common occurrence. But there are occasions where there are a couple of dollars, like you mentioned, the $6 and the $10. And you did also mention that there are companies out there that will literally charge you if those checks go uncashed.
Right.
And if that's the case, and let's just say you're not processing through Heartland, but you have a payroll service that's doing that to you now, obviously it seems to me that it would behoove you to encourage that service personnel to go with the direct deposit route, because those checks are automatically deposited versus you getting whacked so much money if they don't cash the check.
Yes.
Right? I mean,
yes.
Yeah. Minute, fine details. This is the business of 1,000 details, and you're running a restaurant, or you're the GM or the owner, and it's like, oh my gosh, man, why wouldn't you want to simplify everything just to keep all this stuff, 1, compliant, 2, cost-effective, and 3, getting a return on investment and maximizing your profit with no headaches? That's what I'd be looking for.
And 2 things I'll touch on with regards to that, because you're absolutely dead on with that, Roger. The one is, so in getting new employees set up with direct deposit, that usually takes a couple weeks for any payroll service to properly, because they have to connect the data with the bank that the employee uses. So they have to test that draw in the direct deposit. So those people will have live checks for a couple of weeks usually if they're paying weekly prior to the direct deposit being set up. But the direct deposit also significantly lowers costs to the employer because, again, they're able to hold on to that money longer with a float, so they're able to keep that interest on their bank account longer. It also allows the ability to manage your employees where they're not off running down to, like you said, the check cashing place to cash those checks. They're there on site. They've got their money in their accounts. And some major retailers today are actually playing with this concept of real-time payroll where, Walmart has gone out on a limb and they've said, you know what, instead of employees having to wait till the end of the week to get direct deposits, we're actually going to deposit the money into their bank account each hour that they work. So that's where, some of this new innovative thinking, these companies that can handle it, that have big pockets, they can play around with a lot of this stuff. But that's the mentality of a lot of people today is, I want the money as soon as I can get it. And the employer, I think, if to make that a better or an easier situation for the employees is going to come out on top.
And there's got to be, well, you already mentioned the P.O.S. integration and press a button and bang, everything goes. We also have the portal, the specific Heartland portal where, you can check on any aspect of the whole service and the system itself. Are there any special benefits for clients that either have credit card processing through Heartland and want to take on payroll, or they're payroll clients and they're interested in processing and now you're giving them a better package because they've got both?
That's a great question, and I get asked that a lot, as you can imagine. I spend most of my time with existing Heartland credit card clients, but we do sell our different products and services standalone, and we can bundle those services both from a pricing perspective as well as a technology integration perspective, because if an employer, if a restaurant has a point of sale system, and not to take anything away from this conversation, but Heartland also provides several top-notch point of sale systems today that this stuff keeps getting updated all the time. We just had our big national conference in Denver, Colorado. This was a few weeks ago. They just released 5 Heartland branded P.O.S. systems. 2 of them will be sold through dealers. 3 of them will be sold direct through Heartland. And then we also own digital dining, PC America, Posi Touch, and liquor POS. But so because of that, we have a real good handle on the integration, what it takes to integrate both payroll and credit card processing with a point of sale, and then also be able to integrate with the general ledger. So let's say you and I are sitting at we're going down to Buck's Naked Barbecue having lunch, and I leave the tip and I put it on the credit card processing receipt, right? So they bring the receipt back to the POS or the credit card processing gizmo, and they swipe the card and they enter in the tip information. All that information goes directly into the POS or credit card processing database within Heartland.
Yeah.
And then from that, it feeds into the general ledger. So, it's not real time, but it's pretty close. So that the owners, the managers, and the people that are working on the finances, the CPAs, the brokers, they know in real time what the FICA tip is, the FICA tip credit is, what the tip allocation is, what the tax and payroll liabilities are, all in real time, pretty close to real time, which really gives you fingers on the pulse management when it comes to one or many restaurants. I think it's a true differentiator in the market.
I would agree. I mean, the common term for that used to be vertical integration, where one company would control every aspect of the process to make it simpler for the client, add that value-added service. I mean, everything is going to like one-stop shopping, and now you're talking about POS, and you've already mentioned some of the biggest, most reputable brands in POS companies is now owned by Heartland, and you're coming out with these branded systems that one-stop shop, it does it all. So, that's another benefit to take a real deep look at. Let me ask you a question about different packages based on number of employees, number of locations, and how the fees and the pricing goes based on the size of the restaurant, like I said, the number of locations, the number of staff in each one, or if it's just an independent place, if I got 20 people versus 70 people, how do I shop for what I need through Heartland?
That's a great question. And when it comes to pricing, I personally know that, and this is 20 years of experience. I've worked at ADP, Paychex, Sage. I've been with a lot of the other payroll companies. Our flexibility, when it comes to pricing, we have the most flexibility out there. Now, I'm not going to say we're the lowest price, because I know there's a lot of local players out there that do provide, just off-the-shelf, very, very low pricing. I don't typically sell on price. I sell on value, the things that we can provide the client. My analysis with a client is usually about an hour long. I go through everything, how they're doing everything now, and then see if we can improve on any part of the process. And if we can, I'll walk away. I'll say, it's not a good fit, but maybe it will be at some other time. So our pricing really is determined on 2 things. It's the frequency of pay, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or even semi-monthly in some cases, which would be the 15th and 30th of each month, and the number of employees, the number of employees that they have in the payroll. So those 2 variables are really typically the ones that have the most impact on the pricing. For a weekly payroll, it usually starts at a base rate of about $28. And then about $2 per employee or $2 per check. And then the only other cost that they would have would be the W-2 pricing at the end of the year, which, there's a flat rate for that as well. Now, I will say there's some secrets in the payroll industry, and they don't really want our clients to know about this stuff. But there's a specific cost. There's a cost of doing business in payroll, and the margins are very tight. They are. But when you start getting into some of these more human capital management style systems, these are the systems that would add recruiting modules and performance modules, performance and talent management modules, getting into tracking education and the certifications of your employees and those things. The problem with those, and they charge a lot more for these systems, and they do add a lot of value. I mean, there's a lot of value that you can get out of those systems. The problem is, the employer is only using typically 20% of that system. So they're really buying something that is sold to them because it looks great and it can do all these awesome things. But you know what? To take the time to be able to utilize something like that, you have to be an expert in HR and operations management, which, as you know, most restaurant owners don't have the time to do today. I mean, they're doing so many different things. Right. We base our system really just on what's needed, what's the bottom line of the business, and that's helping the business save money on taxes. It's helping the business hire and do it efficiently. And so that's what our system is. That's what our pricing is really based on, is the bottom line for that client.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're really analyzing the needs of a business and providing them just exactly what they need, nothing more, nothing less, and that's part of the value proposition.
That is 100% correct, and I think it kills me more than anything to walk into a situation and see a business that has bought something that they will never use. They've been oversold, but it's easy to talk them down from that if they give us the time to show them what exactly it is that they need and what it is exactly that can help them manage their business.
So you're a partner, not just a provider.
Yes, yeah, and we don't, we're not going to walk away. We're not going to sell something and walk away. We want to make sure that they're not just happy up front, but they're happy continuously for years, and that's how I'm paid. We're not compensated one time and then off running to the next guy. We are paid residual income based on the satisfaction of the client, and that right there differentiates us from anyone else in the market in terms of payroll offerings, because we have that vested interest. I personally care about how our technology is being utilized by the clients. If they've purchased an HR component where it keeps them 100% compliant from the Department of Labor, audit ready, and they're not utilizing that, then I'm gonna make sure that I sit down with them and we go through the steps of the employee handbook is up to date, the HR policies are all up to date. We want to make sure that they're getting everything out of that system that they paid for.
Well, it's all about retention and satisfaction.
It is.
Yep.
Yes.
Let me ask you, how do the hard checks get delivered? Is it a courier service? Is it via overnight service, combination, or whatever you wish, how it would happen?
So you can have the checks overnighted via courier. FedEx is the courier that we typically go with, and there is a charge for that. I think they charge around $9 or $10. And then they can do it regular mail. I don't advise that because it is, as you know, not guaranteed. It can be, who knows? I mean, things can happen with regular mail. And they do charge for that as well. I think it's like $4 or $5 for the regular mail. Some pretty cool things that we can do that other companies can't is we can set a client up. We can engineer the process for them to print off their own checks. So if they have a laser printer there in the office, all they need to do is get the card stock, and there's security features based on that check stock. Excuse me.
Right.
And they load it into the laser printer. We send them the file, so they give us the hours. We send them the file, and they click print, and they print off all the checks just as we would print them from our printing centers that we have all over the country. So that's why it's pretty cool that they have a lot of flexibility with their system, and they don't have to rely on a courier. I mean, as you know, some remote parts of Maine, like Sunday River. I mean, if a snowstorm hits and 3 feet snowstorm hits, the trucks aren't probably going to get there on time. So having that ability to print off your own checks right there in your office if you have power is pretty cool.
Huge benefit right there. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing worse than not meeting payroll when people expect to be paid, even if it's something beyond your control. Yeah, I've been there. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've had that. Yeah, I mean, in the winter ski resorts, I mean, there have been times when the courier went off the road and he couldn't get the checks there on time, and the people want to go to their bank because they need to, get paid. Excellent. What have I missed anything, Michael, that's really critically important that you want to share with the audience about Heartland? We covered a lot of different things. We talked about challenges, we talked about compliance, we talked about tax credits, we talked about technology versus just a service provider. We talked about convenience, the value added. There was a lot of meat to this conversation, and I'm glad that you so articulately explained it. What have I missed? Anything you want to mention?
I will say that we care deeply about what restaurants are looking for out of payroll today, and if they can even think outside the box on anything really, we value their input. So things like things that you wouldn't even think that restaurants are asking for today. One of the things that I hear about a lot is my employee, lost their password or PIN number. They locked themselves out of the system. I mean, they're constantly calling service to try to get that stuff taken care of or unlocked so that the employee can get back in. One of the things that we're working on right now is facial recognition technology, so that the employees can just take a selfie with their cell phone and be able to access the system. I mean, think about how easy that would be for even with the point of sale system, for them to just take a picture of themselves and get access to the point of sale system and know who it is, at what station they're at, whether it's the bar or on the floor or as a host. I mean, that stuff is pretty cutting edge. But that's input that we get from the restaurants. They're constantly telling us we need more, we need better, we need this, we need that. We will work very hard to continuously improve our service to our clients. Which I just don't know if I see that from a lot of those vendors out there that are happy to take your fee for service, but what are you getting for that fee? That's kind of what I always ask. And security is another big part of our service. We want to make sure that we have a lockdown on the data transmission. So whether it's through the P.O.S. system that we own, through credit card processing, through payroll processing, you want to make sure that the technology behind the vendor that you're working with is domiciled in the U.S., is not being outsourced to Russia or China or India, that they can't really keep tabs on what eyes see all the personal information. You talk about Affordable Care Act. I mean, there's a lot of information just within the Affordable Care Act that we have to report on behalf of our clients. And whoever, if they're utilizing a third party for the Affordable Care Act data, that could be a potential risk to the organization. We've seen it. We've seen these data breaches happen now,
absolutely,
large scale, with payroll companies that have outsourced this technology. And the most recent was the Equifax breach that everybody heard about, but they probably didn't hear about the Equifax sold a payroll service. It was a third-party payroll service, and that payroll service, whatever it was, somebody that worked in the development sold the list of information on the black market. And so now all of a sudden everybody's W-2, the tax returns are being stolen and drained and put into a Swiss bank account because they were able to obtain that W-2 information. And that stuff is happening more and more. And so companies like ours have gone above and beyond on the security of technology as well.
Well, that's a very important point. I'm glad you mentioned. Excellent. Well, thank you, Mike. You were a great guest today.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. Well, you know what? We're gonna have you back to talk all about credit card processing in the future as well. So I think that's another episode to look forward to. That was the Restaurant RockStars podcast, folks. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Again, guys, for listening to our latest episode. You know, I don't need to tell any of you out there the challenges of running this business, right? It's one of the most difficult businesses out there. And there are certain things that are keeping us up at night. I call them pain points. No matter how strong your business is, there's always room for improvement, whether that be staff training or even staffing issues, financial issues, marketing issues, efficiencies, whatever it is. I love talking shop with operators. Why not have a complimentary chat with me? I'll offer you 30 minutes and we'll just sit down and brainstorm and talk about your business. And who knows, maybe we'll work together. Every quarter, I have an opening or two for a one-on-one coaching client, and I love helping operators through these challenges and pain points and helping them come up with solutions for their unique business opportunities or, like I said, the challenges. Also, if you're interested in sponsoring the podcast, you can reach out to me. I'll send you complete information. We offer a 1-minute video ad that will highlight the benefits, the services, the product, anything about your business. And there's so many opportunities there. So if that holds interest, please reach out to me as well. Roger@restaurantrockstars.com. If you like what you're hearing, please leave us a review on iTunes. It will help other owners, managers, and hospitality professionals to find us. And we will see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Restaurant RockStars Podcast. For lots of great resources, head over to restaurantrockstars.com. See you next time.